Find out what's going on. Get involved. Change things from the inside. Make a difference. Take pride. Multicultural at its best. The Luisa Marshall Show. Coming up.
All new, simply the best. Get inspired. On the show, he's a cyclist, a coach, an aeromedical evacuation specialist, a counter-improvised explosive device operator and analyst, a Canadian hero, but most of all, a hero for all kababayans. Born in the Philippines, moved to Canada at 2 years old. Inspired by his grandfather, Captain Emilio Liwanag, a Philippine naval officer hero who fought in World War II and the Korean War, Michael spent most of his adult life for the service of others and was honored with the Philippine Mabini Award in 2018. In June 2016, Michael received Canada's Order of Military Merit. Now working as Chief Warrant Officer for the Health Services Reserve, Michael is joining us from Ottawa to share his journey of courage and survival, overcoming PTSD, and his coaching in the upcoming Invictus Games.
And so one way to honor them is to
get ready to be inspired. All these coming up. Hello. If you are a Filipino watching this show, you're gonna love it. We are always proud of kababayans who are humble heroes and making a difference in the world. We have Michael Fuentespina on the show. Michael, we are happy to have you on the show today. Can I call you Mike or Michael?
Mike's fine.
Mike is fine. Okay. So, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate you contacting me and having me here today.
How's Ottawa? How's Ottawa nowadays? I mean, Ottawa is the most talked about city in the news right now. And I can't believe what happened there. So the Freedom Convoy did a lot of damage over there in the city of Ottawa. So how are you guys holding up?
It's a little bit of both. They've been fairly peaceful, and there've also been some number of incidences that's happened. So I think though that the downtown residents are having a very difficult time with this situation, an extremely difficult time.
I understand what they're fighting for, but I think we just have to do it peacefully.
I absolutely agree with you there.
Yes. So, Mike, you joined the military at a very young age. What made you decide to join the military?
Well, everyone joins for a different reason. And for me, I was really young. I joined for the money. So, and it evolved throughout the years, right? So I joined for the money when I was young, and the adventure. They're sending you all over the country, doing some really interesting things that normal 19 and 20-year-old people don't normally do. But then it evolved to when I went to Bosnia. It went from a job to being more of a profession, because when I went over to Bosnia, where I was going, we were about 2 hours away, 3 hours away from the nearest medical facility. So basically me and the few people that I had in my camp were the last stop for these individuals. And we needed to be able to do our job really well. But then it evolved after Bosnia, going to Afghanistan. Now it's life and death. So it evolved from a job when I was young to a profession as I was getting older, to more of a calling when I went over to Afghanistan.
So it turned into a calling. When did you join the military?
March 1991.
March 1991. Oh my goodness. And then you were deployed to Bosnia in 1999. And the Cold War ended in 1995. So therefore, you did a peacekeeping job in Bosnia? Is that what you did?
Yes.
So I'm particularly, personally, I'm so interested because I went for a a peacekeeping mission, not like what you do, but more on the entertainment in Bosnia and Sarajevo. This was in 2003.
There are inherent dangers for a lot of the entertainers who do come down to visit the troops. Absolutely. So, it is very, very appreciated that you're able to come down in 2003.
Really big eye opener. I learned a lot, and I really, it was overwhelming.
I was really young when I went, and it was my first real experience in a war zone, and the country was absolutely devastated from the previous years before I got there. And it was just really unfortunate just to see the hardships that a lot of the people were going through, the difficulties, the differences between the different factions, and that it was so deep-seated. That was a real eye-opener, because to me, it didn't really I could understand why there was a fair amount of hate, but at the end of the day, it was just differences that people could talk over. Going to Bosnia in 1999, and seeing how deep-seated it was, I ended up going back in 2018. And I went with a bunch of ill and injured soldiers from Canada, and we met up there on a big bike ride with the Serbian and Bosnian soldiers. And it was amazing to see all three come together. Even when we went to the sites of the atrocities, how bad and how just horrific the situations were in those cities, and the fact that in 2018, all three factions are together healing. So that was really nice to see that something did come from what we did over there.
That was fantastic. The Canadian military did a great job. Being an aeromedical evacuation specialist, so you use a military transport aircraft to carry wounded personnel. That must be a very stressful job for you. You said you wanted to be the best medic that you could be. What inspired you to make that as your profession in the first place? And what were the challenges, and how long did you do that for?
Oh, I
have so many questions. I'm sorry.
Well, I didn't know much about the military when I first joined, but I knew that, infantry sounds really hardcore. So when they said medical, I was just like, yeah, hey, that sounds really interesting to me. So you know what? They they send you to school. They teach you everything that you need to know. I found that absolutely fantastic. It was amazing training.
How did it change your life?
You know what? It almost immediately. So my first exposure to aeromedical evacuation was I was a coordinator. So I was a coordinator in Winnipeg at the Aerospace Health Services Squadron. And I coordinated all the domestic and international missions that the Canadian Armed Forces were doing all around the world. And the one thing that I did realize is that if you're a Canadian citizen in an extreme circumstance, if you're a Canadian diplomat or a Canadian soldier, if you are in need of medical help, the military will come and get you, no expenses spared. The first thing they say, just save the person's life. It doesn't matter how much this thing is going to cost, we'll sort that out later. So that was really nice to see when I was young. And, they really do care about, the citizens of our country. So that was nice to see, that we're doing that in many different countries in Africa and Europe, wherever, our diplomats and Canadian citizens may be.
That's amazing. In 2007, you were a part of a team that helped save the life of an American soldier.
I was sitting at my desk and I got a call from an American aircraft flying over the ocean. They were flying to Walter Reed Hospital to Washington, D.C., and one of their soldiers died en route. So they said that, we are going to land in Gander, Newfoundland. I said, okay, wait one, hang on. I called up Gander, Newfoundland. They're like, don't send them here because we don't have the facilities to do something definitive. You're going to waste time because as soon as they land, we're going to stabilize. We're going to have to send them off to St. John's, Newfoundland. So I ended up calling St. John's, Newfoundland, told them the situation. So what we ended up doing, this soldier's injuries were it was outrageous. He had so many problems and issues with him. So what we ended up coordinating, we got a cardiac team from the hospital. We flew them out to the airport with the helicopter. So as soon as I called back to the aircraft, we diverted them to St. John's, Newfoundland. When they landed on the tarmac, we had a helicopter waiting for them, picked up the patient right at the tarmac, flew them over to the hospital, and the whole entire medical team there managed to save this individual's life. So it's pretty amazing because he died en route, and they kept him alive with CPR for quite some time.
Wow. Oh, wow. That what a story. So you served in Afghanistan in 2009 as a counter-improvised explosive device operator analyst. You survived that. That was a very risky job. Were you ever scared for your life?
Well, I would say that I was scared for my life on the flight over. You're starting like right away. So I did.
That's flying there for the first time.
I did air medevac for 6 years prior to going over. So I was air medevacing all the massive trauma injuries that we were having in Afghanistan. So I knew that the risks that I was undertaking, that all the soldiers were undertaking, it was real. Some of the people I knew, and when you're looking at absolutely catastrophic injuries, you better start believing in what you're doing. You're not there for the money anymore. The Canadian Armed Forces is representing Canadian society, what's written in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. If you think that, if you don't believe in one tiny bit of that, it's definitely not worth going over if you're going to lose your legs or your life. And a suicide vehicle had targeted us, and it drove up right beside us and detonated. And so, our vehicle was hit. It was unfortunate. There was some civilian casualties that had died because of the explosion, and it hit the civilians that were on the street. But for us in the vehicle, we ended up surviving.
We'll be back with you. Don't go away. Many soldiers and military personnel are suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. How are you? Mike?
I'm doing well. I was diagnosed with PTSD 9 years after my tour, but it's all really about how you manage it. Obviously, to have like flashbacks and things that maybe remind you of what you've seen and what happened. That's fairly normal. It's just how often it happens. Say you come back from a tour, that's fairly normal. You're going to see some of that within the first 6 months. But if it's going on past like a year or 2 or 3 years and it's really affecting you, then that's when you need to kind of like really seek some help.
So you're managing your PTSD.
Myself right now, everything is absolutely fine. Yeah, absolutely.
That's wonderful. It's nice to hear that. In your experience, suffering from PTSD, like you're saying, now you're managing it. What do we do as Canadians? What do we have to do more to help our veterans that are wounded and suffering from PTSD?
One of the big problems and issues is when a person becomes injured, they're not that same person anymore. So we've got two types of injuries. We've got a physical injury, we've got like a mental health injury, right? So a physical injury, a soldier may have, let's say he lost his legs. His life is going to change. His or her life is going to change immediately, like right away. And so there's a lot of mechanisms in place to help out with that. Care, rehabilitation, retraining. The problem with mental health is usually it's not as immediate as a physical injury. You lose your legs, it's changed right now, right away. So with oftentimes people who have PTSD, they might not recognize it until a couple of years afterwards. So that's where there's problems and issues. And so we need to have early recognition. So there are mechanisms within the military to do that. There's mechanisms once it is discovered, how we can treat the individuals and help them reintegrate back either into the military or reintegrate back into civilian society.
In June 2016, you received an outstanding recognition, Canada's Order of Military Merit from the Governor General. As a Filipino-Canadian, how important is this recognition to you? And how proud are you serving the military?
Very humbled. That's the Canadian, that's the military version of the Order of Canada. And 0.1% of the military will receive investiture into the Order of Military Merit. And it's based on your career, not on any one incident. So, the fact that they recognized what I've done, going overseas, working in Aeromedic, on tour, the leadership, the training that they provided me to succeed, absolutely, I was very humbled that I was chosen to be invested.
Congratulations, you deserve it. You really deserve it. Tell me, when was the last time you visited the Philippines, and what was the best part of it?
2019. Actually, it was right before the lockdown. So I was there in January, seeing my cousins, just the way of life over there. And, you can see why in the Canadian military it's important to have diversity and equity and inclusion. And the fact that, Filipinos are known for their hard work, they're known for their loyalty, they're known for their family. Those are all values that we can bring into the Canadian military, into Canadian society. And you can see how strong it is over there in the Philippines. Everyone's so willing to help you. Everyone's so friendly. It's just such a beautiful country.
What is your favorite Filipino food?
My favorite is halo-halo when I was over there. The halo-halo in the Philippines is so different than it is here in Canada.
Gosh.
Yeah,
Give me five. Give me five. Me too.
I would say that I probably would have 2 meals a day was a halo-halo.
Oh my gosh.
I love adobo. I love
Yes.
Filipino breakfast. A Filipino breakfast, I would say, is kind of it's not, is it really a breakfast? Breakfast, lunch, could also be a supper.
That's Filipino breakfast.
Yeah.
With fried rice, with garlic rice, right? How's the Filipino community in Ottawa?
Oh, you know what? It's difficult to find them. There's not
Are they hiding?
They must be. So I try to find Filipino. So you talked about cooking food. So
Yes.
I go on Facebook to find Filipino food, and it's
in Ottawa. There's
Yeah,
no Filipino restaurant?
there's a Filipino restaurant, but normally you go to Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji. There's people selling all kinds of Filipino food everywhere, but it's only the 2 restaurants. Now it's mainly this one Filipino restaurant that sells Filipino food, but there's hardly anyone. Before I can just go when there's a work party, I just order some lumpia, and everyone loves, all the potato. They're like, "Oh, we love this." What is this? I'm like, it's lumpia. How can you not know what this is? When I was in Winnipeg, that was my go-to for work parties.
Yes. You grew up in Winnipeg.
Yeah, that's hardcore, Philip. That's Little Manila there.
There you go. That's where you got your first training in the military.
Yeah.
Growing up in Winnipeg. Oh my gosh.
So it's different because, I went to a really, Filipino community in Winnipeg, very strong, very tight. And then I joined the military. I'm like, there's 3 of us in Canada. And then I come here and I go to Ottawa and, I'm at the Health Services headquarters, where the Surgeon General and, all the senior staff. I walk in and I'm literally the only Asian. And I'm not only the only Filipino, I'm the only Asian.
That's why you're special, Mike. You are so special. I realized, and I seen that you loved cycling so much. So tell me about your experience biking and riding around New Zealand with the Paralympian Christine Gauthier. So that, oh my gosh, that was so cool. So do you just wake up one day and decided to do that, or you really have that love for cycling?
So I competed in cycling when I was young. And so when I ended up working in a military unit called JPSU, Joint Personnel Support Unit, that's to help the ill and injured get back to reintegrate them into society. There was a military charity called Soldier On. And Soldier On uses the power of sport for ill and injured soldiers to help them rehabilitate, rehabilitate, and recover. So they were sending me to various events all around the world. The first time they asked me, do you want to ride with some ill and injured soldiers from Paris, France to London, UK? I was like, yeah, no, absolutely. So they brought me on one. We flew over. We had a ride. One person had PTSD, another person was an amputee. We had a number of mixed injuries, and that turned out to be one of the hardest experiences in my life because we were going up mountains, and you can imagine that when one person, if you have like a physical disability, or maybe you're not so much in shape. I would help push them up the mountain, and then I would come back and push the next person up. And so that was the very first time that we did that. And it turned out that we ended up doing that all around the world. So there was all kinds of military charity and events going on around the world. And so in 2018, I got contacted. I was asked if I wanted to lead a Canadian team to ride from the southern tip of New Zealand to the northern tip of New Zealand, all by bike, through the mountains and everything, with a specially made bike with a paraplegic in the front, sitting down, that's doing a hand cycle, and I was on the back, pedaling the bike and steering it. So it was a strange bike, but it was a fantastic experience, because I never knew what the difficulties that a paraplegic has to go through in life, and here I am for the next 4 weeks living. Their caregivers couldn't come with us. So, we're providing not only that riding and companionship, and we're partners in pretty much everything. Simple thing that riding out in the cold, a paraplegic has a weakened immune system, and that, they're very susceptible to becoming ill. I had no idea that was the case, So when it was raining, we had to make sure that the rider was bundled up head to toe, was as warm as possible. We had to make frequent stops to ensure that everything was all right, because there's washroom issues, there's medication issues. It was really difficult and trying, but it was an excellent experience. What was great about that New Zealand experience is we were a number of different countries. It was Australia, the US, UK, and New Zealand and Canada. And it was supposed to be a competition, but it turned out that, all the, because of the injuries that people had, and we ended up becoming just one big team, and we helped each other push, helped each other complete that event, because it was a couple, I think it was 1,200 kilometers through mountains. It turned out to be a team event as opposed to separate countries competing against each other. So it was a really fantastic experience how everyone came together.
I'm really excited to know that you are getting ready to compete for the Invictus Games this coming April.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you?
I'm coaching.
You're coaching. Okay,
Yes.
So you're coaching.
So that's taking place in The Hague because of COVID. They have a number of restrictions on how many people can attend. So I can always help out. It's most likely that I'll be helping out virtually, so that we have all the athletes on ground.
Mike, you have a journey that's so interesting, so compelling, extraordinary, and most of all, fulfilling. Where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
Oh, 10 years from now, hopefully doing something where I am doing that contribution to Canadian society. Where that might be, I'm not sure yet. Right now, I'm just concentrating on what we need to do to. I'm working with the Health Services Reserves. So the Health Services Reserves are people who work, all the healthcare professionals who work part-time in the military. And we do have some full-time folks. So right now, my focus is trying to push this organization forward. Some of my friends have died, and they died for a reason. And so one way to honor them is to do the best that I can. I want to make my contribution within the military. When I leave the military, I also want to make a contribution. I want to do something to honor those who died so that I can be here.
Did your grandfather inspire you to join the military?
Yeah, absolutely. My mom talked about it all the time, and all of my family talked about that. And he ended up having a base named after him, and a naval ship was named after him too. So he was definitely larger than life and accomplished way more than I did.
That was a big deal. That was a big deal. He must be so proud of you, Mike. Your grandfather's probably really proud of you.
I hope so.
With your lifelong military career, do you consider yourself a hero?
No, not at all.
Not at all?
No.
Mike, I am so proud of you. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. And for the game, Invictus Games, all the best to you.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for watching. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Please don't drink and drive. Don't text and drive. Always be kind. Let's stop bullies. Stay safe, everyone. See you next week.